The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent, except for the soft hum of translation devices. Ambassador Kethvara stood in the center of the room, her crystal body flickering with pale blue light. She was dying, and everyone could see it. Her people were dying too, and she had come here as their last hope. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "We need help. The Void Hunters have taken 17 of our worlds. They eat everything. Our cities, our people, even the space around. Our planets. Nothing stops them." The other aliens in the room looked uncomfortable. Some whispered to each other. Others stared at their hands or their devices. Nobody wanted to meet her eyes. Chairman Mordock was a tall, gray creature with 4 arms and cold black eyes. He had ruled the council for 50 years. He cleared his throat and spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "Ambassador Kethvara, we understand your pain. But the Void Hunters are beyond our power to stop. They have destroyed 3 other species before yours. Kalani, the Brex, and the Tolar Federation. All gone. We tried to help them too." "You have weapons," Kethvara said. "Ships, armies. The Council controls half the galaxy." "Yes, we have weapons," Mordock replied. "Energy beams that can cut through mountains. Shields that can stop exploding stars. Ships that travel faster than light. But none of it works against the Void Hunters. They eat energy, they drink radiation. They grow stronger with every weapon we fire at them." "Okay." An alien that looked like a walking tree raised one of its branch arms. This was Speaker Veltar from the Forest Worlds. "We tried to negotiate with them once. They do not speak. They do not think like us. They exist only to consume." Another council member, a blue-skinned woman with 6 eyes, nodded sadly. "My people. Fought them for 3 months. We used every weapon we had. Every strategy our best minds could think of. It just kept coming. They ate our laser beams. They absorbed our explosions. In the end, we could only run." Kethvara's light grew dimmer. "So you will do nothing? Will let my people die?" "We will offer you ships," Mordock said. "You can evacuate your remaining worlds. Join our refugee colonies. Start over somewhere safe. Run away." Kethvara's voice rose. "Leave our homes? Our history? Everything we built over 1,000 years? It is better than extinction," Mordock said coldly. "The Void Hunters cannot be stopped. This is a fact. Accept it." The meeting ended quickly after that. Council members left one by one, shaking their heads or muttering to each other. Soon Kethvara stood alone in the Great Hall. Her crystal body barely glowing now, she activated her personal transmitter and sent one final message into space. It was not directed at any planet or any government. It was a desperate cry sent to every frequency she could reach, hoping that somewhere in the vast darkness, someone might be listening. "This is Ambassador Kethvara of the Zilani Federation. Our worlds are dying. The Void Hunters consume everything they touch. The Galactic Council says nothing can stop them. But if anyone out there has ideas, if anyone has weapons that might work, if anyone cares about stopping this evil, please help us. We will share everything we have. Our technology, our knowledge, our friendship. We just want to live." The message traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying with it the last hope of a dying species far away. In a part of space that most aliens avoided, the message reached a hidden monitoring station. The station was built inside a large asteroid disguised to look like just another piece of space junk. But inside, banks of computers recorded every signal that passed through this sector of space. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was on duty when the message arrived. She was 28 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. She had been listening. 2 alien communications for 6 years, and most of them were boring. Trade disputes, weather reports, requests for landing permits. But this message was different. She listened to it 3 times, then called her commanding officer, Commander Morrison. "You need to hear this." Jake Morrison was 42, a career military man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his years as a ship engineer. He listened to the message twice, his face growing more serious with each word. "Run it through the translation computers again," he said. "Make sure we understand it correctly." Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Translation confidence is 97%, sir." This alien species is being attacked by something called void hunters. The Galactic Council says they cannot be stopped. Morrison stared at the screen, showing the alien's desperate face. What do we know about these void hunters? Checking our files now? Amy pulled up information from their secret database. For 300 years, humans had been watching the galaxy, recording everything, learning about every species and every threat. Found them, sir. Classification: extreme threat. They appeared 50 years ago in the Outer Rim. Every species that encounters them is completely destroyed. They seem to eat matter itself and grow stronger from any energy weapon used against them. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. And the Galactic Council says nothing can stop them? That's what they told this ambassador. Morrison smiled, but it was not a happy smile. What was the kind of smile a wolf might wear when it saw a flock of sheep? Get me Director Carter on the secure channel, priority 1. Sir, that'll expose our position. If we send a message that strong, other species might detect us. Do it anyway, it's time. Amy sent the signal, her hands shaking slightly. For 3 centuries, humanity had stayed hidden from the galaxy. They had watched and listened and learned, but they had never revealed themselves. The galactic species thought Earth was a dead world. A toxic ball of rock with gravity too strong and radiation too high for civilized life. They were wrong about the dead part. While Amy waited for the connection, she looked at the pictures on her desk. Her family lived on Earth, in the great city of New Geneva. Her brother worked in the orbital shipyards that no alien had ever seen. Her parents were teachers who prepared children for a galaxy that did not know they existed. Connection established. Her computer announced, Director Helen Carter appeared on the screen. She was a stern woman in her 50s, with silver hair and eyes like steel. She had been in charge of humanity's secret space program for 15 years. Commander Morrison, this better be important. Director, we've intercepted a distress call from the Galactic Council. Species called the Zilani is being destroyed by something called void hunters. The Council says nothing can stop them. Carter was quiet for a moment. Send me everything you have on these void hunters. Morrison nodded to Amy, who transmitted the files. Carter read quickly, her expression growing darker. These things have destroyed 4 species completely? Yes, ma'am. They're still spreading. Carter closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, Morrison saw something that made his heart beat faster. It was the look of a predator that had finally decided to hunt. Commander, prepare your station for full communication protocols. We're coming out of the shadows. The connection ended, leaving Morrison and Amy alone with the weight of history. For 300 years, humanity had hidden from the galaxy, content to watch and learn and grow strong in secret. But now the galaxy was in danger, and the monsters threatening it had made one crucial mistake. They had never fought Deathworlders before. Director Helen Carter stood in the command center of Haven Base, humanity's most secret facility hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. The room was filled with a soft glow of holographic displays showing star maps, ship positions, and intercepted alien communications. Around her, the most important people in human space government waited for her decision. Show me the Void Hunter data again, she said to Dr. Lisa Park, humanity's leading expert on alien life. Forms Dr. Park was a small woman with bright green eyes and hands that never stopped moving when she talked. She had spent 20 years studying alien biology from fragments and transmissions. Now she pointed to a 3-dimensional image floating in the air above them. These are not normal aliens, she said. They don't have bodies like we understand them. They seem to be made of some kind of energy that eats matter. When they touch something, it simply disappears. Ships, planets, even empty space itself gets consumed. General Robert Hayes, a big man with white hair and old battle scars, leaned forward in his chair. How do they fight? They don't fight, Dr. Park replied. They just consume. Every weapon the galactic species have used against them only makes them stronger. Energy beams feed them. Nuclear explosions are like food to them. Even kinetic weapons seem to have no effect. Captain Ben Hughes studied the tactical reports on his tablet. He was 35 years old and had fought in every major human conflict of the past decade. His specialty was finding ways to win battles that looked impossible. The galactic species fight with energy weapons almost exclusively, he said. laser beams, particle cannons, plasma charges. All of it feeds these void hunters. But look at their defense strategies. He gestured to the holographic display. They form perfect battle lines. They retreat in organized formations. They follow what they call civilized warfare protocols. Colonel Steve Collins, sitting across from Hughes, nodded slowly. Collins was a thin, quiet man who specialized in unconventional warfare. He had written the book on guerrilla tactics that every human soldier studied. "They're fighting a war," Collins said. "The Void Hunters aren't fighting at all. They're just eating. It's like watching sheep try to negotiate with wolves." Carter walked around the table, studying the faces of her advisors. These were the best minds humanity had produced. And for 300 years they had been preparing for the day when humans might need to fight for their survival. None of them had expected that day to come because they were fighting for someone else's survival. "What advantages do we have?" she asked. Captain Hughes activated another display. "We're used to fighting on a world that tries to kill us every day. Earth's gravity is 3 times higher than most inhabited planets. Our radiation levels would sterilize most alien species and ours. Our weather patterns shift like weapon systems. We evolved to survive in conditions that would be considered warfare by galactic standards," Dr. Park added. "Our weapons technology developed completely differently from theirs. We never abandoned kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, or projectile systems. While they refined energy weapons to an art form, we kept building things that hit hard and explode. More importantly," Collins said, "we understand concepts they've never needed to learn. Total war, asymmetric tactics, the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. They've had peace for so long that they've forgotten how to truly fight." Carter stopped walking and faced the group. "Are you telling me that we can succeed where the entire Galactic Council has failed?" "Ma'am," Hughes replied. "I'm telling you that we're the only species in the galaxy that grew up in hell and learned to like it. These void hunters consume energy and matter, but they've never faced opponents who specialize in controlled chaos." New voice spoke from the back of the room. "They've also never faced opponents who consider survival more important than honor." Everyone turned to look at Commander Sandra Miller, head of Human Intelligence Operations. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the ability to see patterns that others missed. "I've been studying galactic military doctrine for 15 years, Miller continued. "Every species fights the same way. Honorable engagements, clear battle lines, predictable tactics. They announce their attacks. They offer surrender terms. They follow rules of war that would get you killed in any human conflict." "What are you suggesting?" Carter asked. "I'm suggesting that we don't fight fair. We don't announce our intentions, don't follow their rules. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we hit where they don't expect it." General Hayes spoke up. "Director, we have 17 battle groups ready for deployment. Each group includes ships that were designed for combat in Earth's asteroid fields and Jupiter's radiation zones. Our crews have trained in environments that would kill most aliens just from the stress." Carter looked at the star charts showing the Void Hunter advance. Red markers indicated consumed systems. Yellow markers showed systems under attack. Green markers showed the few safe zones that remained. The pattern was clear and terrible. The Void Hunters were spreading like a disease and nothing was slowing them down. "How long do the Zilani have?" she asked. Dr. Park checked her calculations. It's based on the consumption rate. Maybe 2 weeks before their last populated system falls. "How long to get our forces there?" 8 days if we push the engines hard," Hughes replied. Carter closed her eyes and thought about the decision she was about to make. For 3 centuries, humanity had remained hidden from the galaxy. They had watched alien civilizations rise and fall, had seen wars and peace treaties and first contact ceremonies, all from the shadows. They had remained hidden not because they were afraid, but because they knew that revealing themselves would change everything. The galaxy saw Earth as a dead world orbiting a dangerous star. They classified it as a death world and marked it as unsuitable for life. They were wrong, but they were wrong in a way that had protected humanity for generations. The galaxy's civilized species couldn't imagine that anyone would choose to live in such conditions, much less thrive in them. But now, the galaxy was dying. And the very traits that made humans seem impossible to alien minds might be the only hope for survival. Commander Morrison, Carter said into her communicator. Yes, ma'am. Broadcast a response to the Zilani ambassador. Tell her that help is coming. Don't identify us as human yet. Just tell her that someone heard her call and someone is coming. That will reveal our communications capabilities. It's time to stop hiding, Commander. We're going to war. She turned to face the room full of advisors and military leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, for 300 years we've been preparing for the day when humanity might need to fight for its survival. That day has come, but we're not fighting for our survival. We're fighting for theirs. General Hayes stood up. What are our rules of engagement? Carter smiled, and it was the kind of smile that had been seen on human faces since the species. First, learn to make weapons from sticks and stones. There are no rules, General. These void hunters want to consume everything. Then they're about to learn what it means to face a species that learned to fight in hell and considers it home. The room erupted in controlled activity as orders were given and plans were made. For the first time in 3 centuries, humanity was going to war. But they weren't going as conquerors or explorers or diplomats. They were going as what they had always been. Survivors who refused to give up, fighters who turned disadvantages into weapons, and the children of a world that had taught them that sometimes the only way to save something beautiful is to become something terrible. The shadows were moving, and the galaxy was about to learn what Deathworlders could do. The space around Zilani Prime was filled with the twisted remains of what had once been a beautiful solar system. 3 planets had already been consumed by the Void Hunters, leaving behind empty spheres of nothingness that hurt to look at. Remaining Zilani ships floated in desperate defensive formations, their elegant crystal hulls flickering with the last of their power. Ambassador Kethvara stood on the bridge of the evacuation ship Bright Hope, watching her homeworld prepare to die. The Void Hunters moved like a black tide across space, consuming everything they touched. Zilani warships fired their most powerful energy weapons at the approaching darkness. But the beams simply disappeared into the void, making the hunters grow larger and stronger. Ambassador, her aide whispered, we should leave now. The last transport ships are ready. Kethvara shook her head. I will not abandon my world. If we must die, we will die here. Suddenly, her ship's communication system activated. A voice spoke in her language, but the accent was strange, unlike anything she had heard before. Zilani ships, this is Admiral Kate Thompson of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your message. Help has arrived. Kethvara stared at the communication panel. Human, I do not know this species. You wouldn't, the voice replied. We've been watching from the shadows for a long time, but not anymore. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear as massive ships appeared from nowhere. They looked nothing like the graceful vessels of the galactic civilizations. These ships were angular and brutal, covered in thick armor plating and bristling with weapons that looked primitive, but somehow threatening. They were painted in dark colors and bore symbols that seemed to promise violence. The largest ship was 3 times the size of anything in the Zilani fleet. Its hull was scarred and pitted, as if it had fought in 1,000 battles. Weapons pods covered every surface, and engines that glowed with dangerous energy pushed it forward with shocking speed. Zilani vessels. This is Admiral Thompson aboard. The New Horizon. Pull your ships back to minimum safe distance. We're going to show these Void Hunters what happens when they threaten innocent people. Admiral Kate Thompson stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. She was 52 years old, a career military, an officer who had spent her life preparing for battles that most humans hoped would never come. Her crew of 300 represented the best that humanity could produce. Soldiers who had trained in the asteroid fields of the outer system, engineers who could rebuild a ship's engine while under enemy fire, and tacticians who had studied every form of warfare their species had ever invented. Void Hunter formations are approaching, reported Commander Ryan Foster, her tactical officer. They're moving in the same pattern they've used against every other species. Straight advance, consuming everything in their path. Weapons status, Thompson asked. Lieutenant Paul Reed, her weapons officer, smiled grimly. All kinetic batteries loaded and ready, nuclear torpedo tubes flooded, chemical explosive payloads armed, were carrying enough firepower to crack a moon in half. Thompson nodded. The human fleet carried no energy weapons at all. Everything they had was designed to hit hard and explode violently, while the galaxy had perfected elegant beam weapons and sophisticated energy shields. Humans had kept building things that worked through simple, brutal physics. Communications: open a channel to all Zilani ships. Channel open, Admiral. Attention, Zilani forces. You're about to see something that has never happened before in galactic history. These Void Hunters have consumed everything in their path because they feed on energy, grow stronger from every energy weapon fired at them. But they have never faced opponents who never abandoned kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. She paused, watching the Void Hunters approach. They moved like living darkness, reaching out with tendrils of nothingness that consumed space itself. They think they know how warfare works in this galaxy. They're about to learn that they've never fought Deathworlders before. The first human fighters launched from the larger ships like angry wasps from a disturbed nest. They were small, fast, and painted in colors that seemed to absorb light. Unlike the graceful alien fighters that moved in perfect formations, the human ships swarmed and dove and attacked from every direction at once. Captain Nicole Davis led the first squadron in her fighter Hellcat. She was 28 years old and had learned to fly in the radiation storms around Jupiter. The gravitational forces that would crush most alien pilots were just another day at the office for her. All fighters remember your training, she said over the communication system. These things eat energy, so we feed them metal and explosives instead. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't give them time to adapt. The human fighters opened fire with weapons that would have seemed primitive to any galactic observer. Kinetic cannons that fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. Chemical rockets that exploded with violent force. Machine guns that sprayed bullets in deadly streams. The Void Hunters had never encountered such weapons before. They reached out with their consuming tendrils, expecting to absorb the energy and grow stronger. Instead, they were hit by chunks of metal moving at significant fractions of the speed of light. The kinetic energy was transferred through simple physics, tearing holes in their dark forms. For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunters took damage. Admiral Thompson watched the battle displays with grim satisfaction. All ships, advance and engage. Show them what 3 centuries of preparation can do. So the human fleet moved forward like a pack of wolves. Each ship was designed for a specific purpose, and together they formed a fighting force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Destroyer ships launched clouds of kinetic projectiles. Cruiser ships fired nuclear torpedoes that exploded with the force of small suns. The massive dreadnoughts used railguns that could punch holes through asteroids. Commander Foster coordinated the boarding actions as human. Assault troops prepared to do something that no galactic species had ever attempted: board a Void Hunter vessel and fight them hand to hand. First assault team, prepare for breach, he announced. Sergeant Tony Blake led the boarding party. He was a big man with scarred hands and eyes that had seen too much combat. His team carried weapons that worked through simple mechanical principles: shotguns that fired metal pellets, rifles that used chemical propellants, and explosives that relied on molecular bonds breaking apart violently. Remember, he told his team as they prepared to launch, these things eat energy and absorb matter. But they've never dealt with good old-fashioned human stubbornness, backed up by chemical explosives. The assault pods launched from the human ships like bullets from a gun. They struck the Void Hunter constructs and began cutting through the dark material with plasma torches and diamond-edged saws. The Void Hunters tried to consume the attacking humans, but discovered that the assault troops were protected by armor that worked through simple physical principles rather than energy fields. Blake's team fought their way into the heart of a Void Hunter construct, using tactics that would have horrified any civilized species. They used explosives to collapse passages behind them. They set fires using chemical accelerants. They fought like their ancestors had fought when humanity was young and the world was trying to kill them every day. Ambassador Kethvara watched from her ship as the impossible happened. The Void Hunters, unstoppable destroyers of entire civilizations, were being pushed back by these strange newcomers. The humans fought without honor, without rules, without mercy, thought like the universe owed them nothing, and they intended to take what they wanted anyway. "Who are these humans?" she whispered. Admiral Thompson's voice came over the communication system, calm and professional. "We're the species that learned to fight on a world that tried to kill us every day. We're the children of storms and radiation and gravity that would crush your bones. We're Deathworlders, Ambassador, and we don't lose." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Void Hunters were retreating for the first time in their existence. They left behind the partially consumed remains of the outer planets. But Zalani Prime was safe. The galaxy was about to learn that there were worse things than Void Hunters in the universe. There were humans who had been awakened from their long sleep in the shadows, and they were very, very angry. News of the human victory at Zalani Prime spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In council chambers and military headquarters throughout civilized space, alien leaders watched recordings of the battle with growing amazement and horror. These unknown humans had done something that every advanced species in the galaxy had declared impossible. They had defeated the Void Hunters on the hegemony homeworld. General Zekdar studied the battle footage for the 100th time. He was the most decorated military leader in galactic history, a master tactician who had won every campaign he had ever fought. But watching the humans fight made him feel like a child trying to understand adult behavior. "They use no energy. Shields," he muttered to his aide. "Their weapons are primitive projectile systems. Their tactics violate every principle of civilized warfare." "How did they win?" His aide, a young officer named Ventil, pointed to the screen. "Sir, look at how they move. They don't fight in formation. They attack from all directions at once. They use their own ships as weapons, crashing them into enemy positions." "That's suicide," Zekdar said. "No, sir, that's something else. Something we don't understand." Meanwhile, Captain Nicole Davis was leading her squadron on a reconnaissance mission deep in Void Hunter territory. Her orders were simple: find their command structures and figure out how they think. But what she discovered was far more disturbing than anyone had expected. "Admiral Thompson, this is Recon 7, she reported over the long-range communicator. "You need to see this." She transmitted images from a system that had been consumed 3 months earlier. Where there should have been empty space, she found something that made her stomach turn. The Void Hunters hadn't just destroyed the planets, it absorbed them completely, turning the matter and energy into more of themselves. But in the center of the system, something was different. A massive structure floated in space, built from the consumed matter of an entire civilization. It pulsed with dark energy and seemed to bend space around itself. "Some kind of factory," Davis reported. "They're not just destroying civilizations. They're using the consumed matter to build something big." Admiral Thompson studied the images from her command center on Haven Base. Around her, human scientists and military officers worked to understand what they were seeing. Dr. Lisa Park was the first to grasp the terrible truth. "They're not just consuming randomly," she said. "This is organized, planned. They're harvesting entire civilizations to fuel some kind of construction project." "Building what?" Thompson asked. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it's the size of a small moon, and it's growing." Thompson turned to Commander Foster. "Get me a strike team. We need to know what they're building." 3 days later, Sergeant Tony Blake found himself leading a team of 12 human soldiers on the most dangerous mission in galactic history. They had infiltrated the Void Hunter construction site using a captured alien transport ship disguised. As refugees fleeing the war, Blake's team was different from any military force the galaxy had ever seen. They carried weapons that worked in vacuum, war armor that could withstand radiation that would kill most aliens instantly, and had trained for combat in environments that would be considered torture by civilized standards. "Remember," Blake told his team as they prepared to breach the Void Hunter structure, "we're not here to win a battle. We're here to gather intelligence and get out alive. These things have consumed for entire species. Don't give them a chance to add us to the list." The team cut through the outer hole using plasma torches and found themselves in a space that defied understanding. The interior of the structure was filled with machinery that worked on principles no human science could explain. Dark energy flowed through conduits that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. But in the center of it all, Private Jenny Smith made a discovery that changed everything. "Sergeant," she whispered into her communicator, "you need to see this." Made his way to her position and found himself staring at something that made his blood run cold. In the heart of the Void Hunter factory, suspended in a field of dark energy, was a map. But it wasn't a map of any single galaxy or star system. It was a map of the entire universe, and it was covered in red markers showing which galaxies had already been consumed. "My God," Blake whispered. "They're not just attacking our galaxy. They've done this before, hundreds of times." Smith pointed to a section of the map that showed their own galaxy. "Look at this, Sergeant. Our galaxy isn't random. They've been moving in a pattern, consuming galaxies in a specific order. We're just the next target in a plan that's been running for millions of years." Blake activated his emergency transmitter. "Admiral Thompson, Priority Alpha. We need immediate extraction. What we found changes everything." But before they could escape, the Void Hunters discovered them. Blake's team found themselves fighting for their lives in the heart of the enemy stronghold. Using weapons and tactics that the universe had never seen before, the battle was brutal and desperate. The Void Hunters tried to consume the human soldiers, but discovered that humans were harder to digest than other species. They fought with a ferocity that seemed to surprise even these ancient destroyers. Private Mike Carter used chemical explosives to collapse part of the structure, buying his team time to escape. Corporal Lisa Wong provided covering fire with a kinetic rifle while her teammates moved to the extraction point, and Sergeant Blake himself stayed behind to plant nuclear charges that would destroy the intelligence they had gathered rather than let it fall into enemy hands. "Go," he shouted to his team. "Get back to the ship. Tell them what we found." The extraction was barely successful. Half of Blake's team made it back to their ship. The other half died buying time for their teammates to escape, but the intelligence they brought back was worth any price. Admiral Thompson stood in the emergency command center. Surrounded by the highest-ranking military officers and scientists that humanity could assemble, the holographic display showed the universe map that Blake's team had discovered. "They call themselves Void Hunters," Dr. Park explained, "but that's not what they really are. They're universe eaters. They move from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything, using the matter and energy to build machines that help them consume the next galaxy faster." General Hayes leaned forward in his chair. "How many galaxies have they destroyed?" "According to this map, thousands, maybe tens of thousands. They've been doing this for millions of years." Thompson stared at the display. "And our galaxy is next."
Out.
"Just next," Dr. Park replied. "We're the final galaxy in this region of space. After us, they move on to the next cluster of galaxies. But first they plan to build their largest harvesting machine yet, using everything in our galaxy as raw material." The room was silent as the implications sank in. The Void Hunters weren't just another military threat. They were the end of everything. Not just human civilization or even galactic civilization, but existence itself in this part of the universe. "Ma'am," Commander Foster said quietly, "our victories at Zalani Prime were just the beginning. We've proven that we can fight them, but can we stop them?" Thompson looked around the room at the faces of her officers. These were people who had spent their lives preparing for the impossible. They had trained to fight in conditions that would kill most alien species. They had developed weapons and tactics that the civilized galaxy couldn't even understand. But now they faced something that was bigger than warfare. They faced the end of everything. "We're going to find out," Thompson said. "Because if we can't stop them, nobody can. And I'd rather die fighting than watch the universe end with a whimper." The war was about to become something much larger than anyone had imagined. It wasn't just about saving the Zalani, or even the galaxy. It was about saving existence itself from creatures that had been ending civilizations since before Earth's sun had been born. The Nexus system had once been home to 12 billion beings across 7 planets. Now, it was the heart of the Void Hunter Empire. twisted collection of dark machines and consumed matter that stretched across the entire system. At its center, the massive harvesting device that Sergeant Blake's team had discovered was nearing completion. When finished, it would consume the entire galaxy in a matter of months. Admiral Kate Thompson stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the largest fleet in human history prepare for what everyone knew would be their final battle round. Her flagship, 300 human warships, waited in formation. They were joined by ships from every species in the galaxy that could still fight. The Zilani had sent their remaining crystal vessels. The Hegemony had contributed their massive battle cruisers. Even the peaceful forest worlds had armed their bioships with weapons they'd never imagined using. But at the heart of the fleet were the humans, and everyone knew it. In 6 months of fighting, they had proven something that no one had believed possible. The Void Hunters could be defeated, not easily, and not without terrible cost, but it could be done. Fleet status report, Thompson ordered. Commander Foster checked his displays. All human vessels report ready for combat. Our alien allies are in position. Total ship count, 847 vessels. Enemy strength unknown, ma'am. The Nexus system is covered in some kind of interference field. We won't know what we're facing until we drop out of hyperspace. Thompson nodded. She had expected as much. The Void Hunters had learned from their defeats. They were adapting, changing their tactics, becoming more dangerous with each battle. But humans were adapting too, and they were better at it. Dr. Lisa Park approached the Admiral with her final report. Ma'am, we've completed our analysis of the Void Hunter core samples that Captain Collins brought back from his last mission. I think I understand what they really are. Go ahead, Doctor. They're not aliens in any sense we understand. They're not even alive as we define life. They're something else entirely. The universe's immune system. Thompson frowned. Explain. Think about it, Dr. Park said. Every galaxy they've consumed was peaceful, advanced, civilized. The species had eliminated war, poverty, conflict. They had achieved perfect order, perfect harmony. They had stopped growing, stopped changing, stopped evolving. And that's bad? For the universe? Yes. The universe needs chaos, conflict, change. When a galaxy becomes too orderly, too perfect, the universe creates these Void Hunters to reset everything, to bring back the chaos that drives evolution and growth. Thompson stared at the tactical display. So they're not evil. They're just doing what they were made to do. Exactly. Which is why energy weapons feed them. Energy is order, structure, predictability. But kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, the kind of controlled chaos that humans specialize in, that's different. That's the kind of chaos the universe needs. Doctor, are you saying that humans were created to fight these things? Dr. Park smiled sadly. No, ma'am. Saying that humans are proof that the universe doesn't need the Void Hunters anymore? We're a species that embodies both order and chaos, creation and destruction, peace and war. We're evolution in action, change made conscious. We're what the universe has been trying to create all along. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus system, and what they saw made even the most hardened veterans whisper prayers to gods they had forgotten. The system was filled with Void Hunter constructs beyond counting. Ships that were kilometers long, defensive platforms that bristled with weapons that bent space itself. And at the center, the harvesting machine that was the size of a small moon and growing larger by the minute. But the humans had brought something that the Void Hunters had never faced before. Not just weapons or tactics or even courage. They had brought hope. Captain Ben Hughes led the first wave of fighters into the storm of enemy fire. His ship, the Defiant, was painted with symbols from his ancestors who had fought in wars on Earth. Centuries ago, behind him flew pilots from every human colony, each one carrying the dreams and prayers of their people. All fighters, remember what we're fighting for, Hughes said over the communication system. Not just our species, not just our galaxy. We're fighting for the right of intelligence to exist in this universe. The battle began with a fury that shook space itself. Human ships dove into enemy formations like missiles, their kinetic weapons, tearing holes in Void Hunter constructs that had never been damaged before. Alien vessels followed their lead, their crews having learned from months of fighting alongside humans that sometimes the only way to save civilization was to embrace a little bit of barbarism on the surface of the harvesting machine. Captain Nicole Davis led the largest boarding action in galactic history. 10,000 human soldiers, supported by alien volunteers who had learned to fight like Deathworlders, stormed the machine's defensive positions using tactics that would have been considered war crimes by civilized standards, but these were not civilized times. Sergeant Tony Blake, recently promoted after his intelligence mission, led a team deep into the machine's core. Their mission was simple: plant enough nuclear charges to destroy the entire structure. The problem was that the machine was defended by Void Hunter entities that had learned to fear humans and were fighting with a desperation that matched their own. "Keep moving," Blake shouted as his team fought through corridors that seemed to exist in dimensions that human minds couldn't properly process. "We stop, we die. We die. Everybody dies." Private Jenny Smith, now a corporal, used chemical flame units to clear a path through the dark entities that tried to block their advance. "Sergeant, we're not going to make it to the core at this rate." Looked at the tactical display on his wrist. They were still kilometers away from their target, and they were running out of time. The harvesting machine was nearing completion. In 30 minutes, it would activate and begin consuming the galaxy. That's when he made a decision that would be remembered for as long as intelligent life existed in the universe. "All teams, this is Blake. Change of plan. Charges in the core are going to overload the entire machine at once." "Sir, that will require someone to stay behind and manually detonate the charges." "I know, Smith. I know." The final assault was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. Human soldiers fought their way to every critical system in the harvesting machine, while their comrades above held off increasingly desperate Void Hunter counterattacks. They planted charges not just to destroy the machine, but to turn its own power against the Void Hunters throughout the system. "Admiral." Thompson watched from her command center as the battle reached its climax. Human ships were falling like leaves in a storm, but they were taking impossible numbers of enemies with them. Alien vessels fought with a courage they had learned from their human allies, proving that the lessons of the Death World could be taught to anyone willing to learn. Admiral Foster reported, "Blake's team is in position. They're ready to detonate." Thompson closed her eyes. She thought about the humans who had died in this war, the pilots who had flown their ships into enemy formations knowing they would never return, the soldiers who had held impossible positions so their comrades could advance, the scientists and engineers who had worked around the clock to give their species every possible advantage. "Do it," she said. The explosion could be seen from 100 light-years away. The harvesting machine didn't just explode, it collapsed in on itself, creating a cascade reaction that consumed every Void Hunter construct in the system. The dark entities that had terrorized the galaxy for so long simply ceased to exist. Their matter and energy returned to the natural chaos of the universe. But something else happened in that moment of destruction. The Void Hunters, faced with opponents who embodied everything they had been created to restore to the universe, found themselves changed. They realized that their purpose had been fulfilled not through destruction, but through the evolution of species like humanity. In the aftermath of the battle, as rescue ships searched for survivors and medical teams treated the wounded, Ambassador Kethvara stood in what would become the new Galactic Council chambers. This time, the meeting was held not on some distant neutral world, but on Luna, humanity's ancient moon. The chamber's design reflected the new reality of galactic civilization. It was beautiful, but functional, elegant, but survivable, combined. The aesthetic sensibilities of a dozen species with the practical engineering that humans had learned from living on a world that tried to kill them. "The Void Hunters are gone," Kethvara announced to the assembled representatives. "Not destroyed, but transformed. They have become guardians against the kind of stagnation that created them in the first place." She looked toward the human delegation, led by Admiral Thompson, who had survived the battle despite being in the thick of the fighting. We've learned something important from our human allies. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice, maintained by those willing to fight for it. Order is not the elimination of chaos. It is the harnessing of chaos for the benefit of all. Admiral Thompson stood to address the council. He didn't come out of the shadows to conquer or to rule.